What if Dutton Ranch has been lying to us this whole time? Not literally, but through expectation. Because ever since that trailer dropped, the message felt obvious. Beth and Rip leave Yellowstone behind. They arrive in Texas, and eventually they clash with Beulah and the Jackson Empire. Simple,
Clean.
explosive. But 6 episodes later, I'm starting to wonder if we've been watching a completely different show. Episode 6, A Cowboy Saint, doesn't move Beth and Rip closer to war. It moves them closer to partnership. And whether that's brilliant storytelling or a dangerous bait-and-switch depends entirely on what happens next. Let's talk about it. When Dutton Ranch started, the setup felt familiar. A powerful family enters unfamiliar territory. Another powerful family already controls the ground. Collision becomes inevitable. Beth looked ready for battle. Rip looked ready to protect. And Beulah? She was framed almost like a force of nature. Confident, calculated, untouchable. Not someone who screams. Someone who wins. That made her exciting. Not because she was evil, but because she felt dangerous. Every scene with her carried tension. You expected one wrong word to turn into open conflict. That's why episode 6 feels so unexpected. Instead of making Beulah scarier, the show makes her human. And that changes everything. This episode gives Beulah something powerful. Vulnerability. We learn more about what drives her. Her ambitions. Her regrets. Her loneliness. And especially her desire to finally experience the kind of love she never had with Everett. Suddenly, she stops feeling like an antagonist. She starts feeling like a person. And, strangely, that's almost more dangerous. Because once viewers understand someone, they stop wanting them defeated. They start wanting them saved. The hotel storyline perfectly captures that shift. Beth and Beulah travel together for what should be a tense business mission. Instead, they slowly become equals. You can feel the similarities. 2 women, 2 legacies, 2 people carrying enormous expectations. Neither of them fully trusts anyone. Neither of them knows how to rest. Neither of them can afford weakness. There's competition, but there's recognition too. And when they finally sit down with the hotelier, the scene does something interesting. Neither woman dominates. Neither woman wins. Together, they convince him. He isn't responding to numbers. He's responding to belief. That's a huge moment. Because suddenly Dutton Ranch isn't showing us rivals. It's showing us partners. And that raises a question. If Beulah isn't the villain, then who is? Then the episode reminds us not to get comfortable. Jamie's disappearance enters the conversation. Immediately, Beth changes. The energy changes. That cold calculation comes back. And now the show wants us asking questions. Why did Beth react like that? What does she think Beulah knows? What isn't being said? The tension becomes less about open conflict and more about secrets. That's good writing. If there's payoff. But if this mystery exists only to create fake suspense, then the show risks frustrating viewers. Because trailers promised confrontation, not endless redirection. Now we need to talk about Rob Will. Because I think this is where the episode becomes weaker. I'm struggling with how fast this character escalates. 1 minute, he's reckless. Next, he's operating like some hidden mastermind. Manipulating people, gathering weapons, creating chaos, turning people against each other. It feels sudden, and that's because the show hasn't invested enough time in him. Great villains don't appear when needed. They grow. Rob Will still feels underdeveloped, which hurts moments that should feel devastating. Especially Chet. Chet's death should have been one of the strongest moments of the season. Because underneath all the anger, Chet wasn't impossible to understand. He felt abandoned, ignored,
Lost.
That's interesting. But instead of slowing down, the show rushes him into disaster. His decisions happen so fast that tragedy becomes spectacle. And then,
He's gone.
afterward, Rip and Joaquin talk. And honestly, that conversation felt less like grief and more like positioning. Positioning Rob Will. Positioning future conflict. Positioning the Jackson family to remain sympathetic. Which, creates an interesting possibility. Maybe the Jacksons and Duttons are not temporary allies. Maybe they're becoming one side. If that happens, the entire structure of the show changes. Quietly, Carter had one of the strongest developments. Dwight's death affected him. For the first time, being a cowboy stops feeling romantic. He sees consequences,
Loss.
responsibility,
And suddenly,
school doesn't seem so bad. That growth felt earned. But his relationship with Orena still feels unstable. The show wants a Romeo and Juliet dynamic. But if the families stop opposing each other, what's the conflict? Something feels unfinished. And I wouldn't be surprised if that storyline breaks apart soon. Episode 6 might end up being remembered as the turning point, not because somebody died, but because expectations changed. Dutton Ranch started as a story about rivalry. Now it's becoming a story about survival, about alliances, about family secrets, about choosing who stands beside you. That can absolutely work, but only if the writers commit. Because viewers can forgive surprises. They rarely forgive feeling misled. So now I'm asking you, is Dutton Ranch setting up something smarter than we expected? Or are we watching a slow bait-and-switch? Would you keep watching if Beth and Beulah became allies? Drop your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe and turn notifications on. Because if episode 7 delivers, we may have to rethink everything.